Pick up a brown plastic bottle from the shelf under your sink. It cost you less than $3. It has probably been sitting there for 2 years, used once to clean a cut, then forgotten. You walk past it every time you reach for the spray cleaner that costs $11, or the mold remover that costs $14, or the whitening paste that costs $8. That one small brown bottle could have done the work of all three, and done it better, and done it without filling your home with fumes you have to open a window to escape. That is what I want to talk to you today. It is not a new product that you need to go out and buy, not something you have to order or hunt for, something that has been sitting quietly under your sink, waiting for you to remember what it is. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka, and I come from a small village. I grew up in a small mountain village in Japan. In our Satoyama, that is the word we use for the landscape where the mountain meets the farmland, where the forest edge meets the rice field, the place where the old working villages were built. Hydrogen peroxide was not a medical item kept in a first aid box. It was a working tool. My father kept a bottle in his workshop alongside camellia oil and rice vinegar. My grandmother used a diluted solution on the cutting boards and the storage jars before putting the autumn pickles down. It was not special to any of us in the village. It was ordinary, the way a good broom is ordinary. You used it and you did not think twice. Then, somewhere between my father's generation and mine, it started to disappear from the kitchen and the workshop. The stores filled with brightly labeled products that smelled strong and cost 10 times more, and the brown bottle got pushed to the back of the shelf. And the 25 things my village used it for, things that worked, things that were safe, things that cost almost nothing, went quiet with it. Leave me a comment below and tell me where you are watching from today. Leave me a comment below and tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one of your comments personally. The subscribe button is right there if you want to see more. It costs nothing, and I will keep sharing what I remember. Now, before any of the 25 methods, you need to understand one thing only. There is just one thing only you need to understand first. Because if you do not understand this, none of what follows will make sense, and you may use the bottle wrong and get no result, or worse, get a bad one. Hydrogen peroxide is water with one extra oxygen atom attached. And that is all there is to it. The chemical name is H2O2. Water is H2O. Hydrogen peroxide is water with one extra oxygen atom attached. That extra oxygen is unstable. It wants to leave. And when it leaves with force. It attaches to bacteria, to mold, to stains, to old organic matter, and it breaks them apart at a level you cannot see with your eyes. This process is called oxidation. But you do not need to remember that word for it to work. What you need to know is this. When hydrogen peroxide touches something living and unwanted, a mold spore, a bacterial colony, an old food stain, it tears it apart and then turns itself into plain water and oxygen. It leaves nothing behind once the process is complete. It leaves behind absolutely no chemical residue at all. No chemical smell that lingers, no film on the surface. It does the work and then it becomes harmless. This is what makes it different from almost every cleaning product in the modern store. Those products leave something behind, often leaving a surfactant film on the surface, a strong fragrance chemical residue, a disinfecting residue that the label says is safe, but that you are still breathing 2 hours later. Hydrogen peroxide finishes its work and disappears. The bottle you buy at the pharmacy, the brown bottle, is typically a 3% solution. That means 97 parts water, 3 parts hydrogen peroxide. This is the concentration that is safe to use in the home without protective equipment, safe around children and animals once it has dried, safe on most surfaces if you respect the short contact times. It is not the same as the 30% or 35% solutions sold for industrial use. Those are dangerous and have no place under a household sink. A standard 3% solution is all you really need for these hacks. Brown bottle, that is all you need. That is all you need. In the 1960s, Japanese rural households were already using hydrogen peroxide this way. The science behind why it worked was not explained to my grandmother in those terms. She knew it killed the bad things effectively. She knew it did not leave a smell. She knew a bottle lasted a long time because a small amount goes far when you use it correctly. She did not need a university to explain the oxygen molecule. She needed a clean cutting board before the first frost, and she had one. She needed a clean cutting board before the first frost, and she had one. What happened after the 1960s is a story I want to come back to because it is worth sitting with. For now, I only want to plant this important question in your mind. The same farmers and craftspeople who built the cleanest, most durable homes in the hardest climates were using a $2 bottle of oxidizing water to do it, and then they stopped using it entirely. Something else happened, and we will get to it before this is done. Something else happened, and we will get to it before this is done. What I want you to do now is go find that brown bottle. Check the label for 3%. If it is expired, if it no longer fizzes when you put a drop on your tongue or on a small cut, replace it. A fresh bottle costs almost nothing at your local pharmacy. Everything I am about to show you begins with that one bottle. There is an old thing my father used to say when he picked up a tool he had not used in a long time. He would hold it, turn it over and say, "This one still works. We just forgot to use it." That is exactly where we are with hydrogen peroxide. It still works. We just forgot. It still works just as well as it did back then. We just forgot the simple power of this bottle. The first 10 uses, starting with the surfaces and rooms where your family eats, sleeps, and breathes, are where we go next. Pull the brown bottle out now and set it on the counter. What follows are the first 10 methods my village used, adapted for the modern home. Read them slowly and carefully. Each one has a reason behind it, not just a step. Hack 1. The cutting board reset. Wooden cutting boards are one of the most contaminated surfaces in the average kitchen, and most people clean them with dish soap and water, which removes surface dirt but does nothing to the bacteria that have worked their way into the grain of the wood. My grandmother's cutting boards were thick hinoki cypress, and they lasted decades. My father used a version of this during the harvest season when the mountain humidity meant that vegetables brought in from the garden were already beginning to carry mold spores. After washing the board with water, she poured a small amount of undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide directly onto the surface, let it sit for 5 minutes while it fizzed, then rinsed with cold water and stood the board upright to dry in moving air. The fizzing is the oxidation at work, pulling bacteria out of the wood grain. Cold water matters - hot water can crack old wood. This takes 4 minutes of your time and costs almost nothing per use. Hack 2: the vegetable soak. Fill a clean basin or your sink with cold water. Add 60 milliliters, about 4 tablespoons, of 3% hydrogen peroxide per 4 liters of water. Soak your vegetables and fruit for 15 to 20 minutes, then rinse with plain cold water. This reduces surface pesticide residue, bacteria from handling, and mold spores on the skin of the produce. My father used a version of this during the harvest season when the mountain humidity meant that vegetables brought in from the garden were already beginning to carry mold spores. The soak extended the life of fresh produce by several days. Dry everything well before storing. Surface moisture accelerates spoiled produce. Hack 4: the mold patch on grout and tile. Empty one shelf at a time to ensure everything stays fresh. Spray or wipe undiluted 3% solution across the shelf surface. Wait for 3 minutes to let it work. Wipe clean with a dry cloth until it shines. The peroxide kills mold spores and bacteria that live in the cool, wet environment of a refrigerator lining. It leaves no fragrance, no chemical taste that transfers to food. Do this once a month and you will notice that produce stays fresh longer. The back corners of a refrigerator where condensation pools are the worst zones. Give those extra contact time. Hack 4: the mold patch on grout and tile. Bathroom grout turns black because mold colonizes the porous cement between tiles. Spray undiluted 3% solution directly onto the affected grout, enough to saturate it, and leave it for 10 minutes without wiping. The mold is not just sitting on the surface, it has put roots into the grout, and the peroxide needs time to follow it in. After 10 minutes, scrub with an old toothbrush and rinse. 2 or 3 treatments over a week will clear most of it. 2 or 3 treatments over a week will clear most of it. This is not a one-wipe miracle, but it is a $2 treatment for a problem that tile cleaning services charge $60 to solve. Hack 5. The Toilet Bowl Overnight Treatment. Pour half a cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide into the toilet bowl before bed. Just do not scrub, let it work. And please do not flush. Please leave it overnight to work its magic. This ensures the best result. In the morning, give one quick brush and flush. The peroxide works through the night, breaking down mineral staining and killing the bacteria that cause odor. My village had no porcelain toilets, but the principle of using an overnight soak to let a weak solution do slow work that a strong scrub cannot, that came from watching my grandmother clean ceramic storage jars. Patience does what force cannot. Now I want to stop here and ask you something. Which of these 5, the cutting board, the vegetables, the refrigerator, the grout, or the toilet, which one do you think would make the biggest difference in your home right now? Leave me your answer below. I am curious what people are dealing with most. Hack 6. The Dish Sponge Rescue. A kitchen sponge is warm, wet, and full of food particles, the perfect place for bacteria to multiply. Soaking a sponge in a solution of 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 1 part water for 10 minutes will kill the bacteria that cause the sour smell and the invisible contamination it spreads across your dishes and surfaces. My father did something similar with the rags in his workshop. A solution soak before drying, because a damp rag left in a wooden workshop in a humid summer became a source of mold within 2 days if you were not careful. Hack 7. The Laundry Whitener for Cloth. Add 120 milliliters, half a cup, of 3% hydrogen peroxide directly to your washing machine's bleach compartment or add it to the drum at the start of a white or light-colored load. It lifts yellowing from cotton and linen without the fiber damage that chlorine bleach causes over time. Our village work clothes. My grandfather's indigo Izome field jacket had a white collar band, were kept clean with vinegar and peroxide combinations that never once rotted the fabric the way commercial bleach eventually does. Chlorine bleach makes things look white right now. Peroxide makes them white and keeps the fabric intact for longer. Hack 8. The Kitchen Drain Deodorizer. Pour half a cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide directly down the kitchen drain. Follow it with half a cup of plain baking soda. Let the fizzing reaction work for 15 minutes, then flush with a full kettle of hot water. This breaks down the organic slime that coats the inside of drain pipes and causes the smell that rises from the sink in warm weather. You are not unclogging a drain with this. It will not shift a physical blockage. You are cleaning the microbial layer that coats a flowing drain and makes it smell like something has died in the pipes. Indeed, it has not at all. It is just alive in a way you do not want. Hack 9. The Pantry Shelf Treatment. Before restocking your pantry after emptying it for cleaning, spray the bare shelves with 3% hydrogen peroxide. Let it dry completely. Do not wipe, let it air dry. Then replace your food items. This kills mold spores and insect eggs that have settled on the shelf surface between cleaning cycles. In the old storehouses of our village, the kura, with thick plaster walls that kept a cool and relatively stable humidity through the summer, the wooden shelving inside was treated this way before the autumn pickles and dried goods went in. The treatment cost almost nothing and protected months of stored food. Hack 10. The Bread Box and Food Container Reset. Plastic food containers and wooden bread boxes develop a stale smell over time, a combination of mold, old food oils, and bacteria embedded in the surface. Wipe all interior surfaces with a cloth dampened with undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide. Leave the lid open and let it air dry fully before closing. For plastic containers that have developed a permanent food smell, leave a hydrogen peroxide dampened cloth inside the sealed container overnight. By morning, the smell will be gone or nearly gone. This is not perfume masking an odor. It is oxidation removing the source of it. 10 methods, 1 bottle, 1 small cost. Each of these came out of the same understanding. Control the invisible things that grow in the warm, wet, food-rich environment of a home, and you control most of the damage before it starts. My grandmother did not have the language of microbiology. She had something older than that. She had results, repeated over decades, passed down with the instruction to trust what works. The next 10 go into places most people never think to use this bottle: the body, the laundry, the garden, and the workshop. And somewhere in there, we need to have an honest conversation about the one thing hydrogen peroxide cannot do, and the concentrations that cross from useful into genuinely dangerous. That part is not optional at all. Set the bottle down for a moment. Before the next 10 methods, there is something I need to say plainly, and I want you to hear it before we go further. Not because I am trying to frighten you in any way, because the voice that tells you the limits of a thing is the only voice worth trusting. The Honest Limits passage. 3% hydrogen peroxide. The brown bottle from the pharmacy is safe for the uses in this series when you respect the concentrations and the contact times. The moment you go above 3%, the rules change entirely. 10% solution will bleach your skin on contact. 30% will burn it. 35% food-grade peroxide, which some people order online believing it is healthier, has sent people to the emergency room for chemical burns in the mouth and throat from doses as small as a few milliliters. I am not exaggerating this. The gap between 3% and 35% is not a sliding scale of the same thing. It is a different substance with a different risk profile entirely. 3% will not cure infections that have already gone deep into tissue. It will not reverse mold damage that has gone into the structural wood of a wall. It will clean the surface, but if the mold has reached the timber, you need a craftsman and possibly a builder, not a spray bottle. It will not restore yellowed plastic that has oxidized from ultraviolet light. It will not fix a drain that is physically blocked. It will not whiten teeth with dramatic speed. The slow, mild whitening effect on tooth enamel is real, but anyone promising overnight results with 3% peroxide is selling you something beyond what the chemistry supports. I will be plain about this. 3% hydrogen peroxide is a cleaning agent, a mild disinfectant, and a surface treatment. It is not a medicine, and it is not a cure. Use it for what it does well, and do not ask it to do more than that. My father used to say the same thing about every tool in his workshop. A chisel is simply a chisel. When you use it as a pry bar, you ruin the chisel and damage the work. And there is just one more thing I need to tell you. Never mix hydrogen peroxide with vinegar in the same container, used on the same surface sequentially. Spray one, wipe, then spray the other. They are effective and safe. Mixed together in one bottle, they form peracetic acid, which is corrosive and will irritate your eyes, skin, and lungs. Keep them separate always. Keep them separate always. Now, with that said clearly, the next 10. Hack 11. The mouth rinse for gum health. Dilute 3% hydrogen peroxide with equal parts water, so 1 part peroxide, 1 part water, and use it as a mouth rinse for 30 seconds, no more, once or twice a week. Spit, do not swallow. This reduces the bacteria that cause gum inflammation and the early stages of gum disease. It is not a replacement for a dentist. It will not reverse advanced gum disease at all. But as a maintenance habit between cleanings, it costs almost nothing and has a measurable antibacterial effect on the soft tissue of the mouth. My grandfather, who had all his teeth until the end of his life, rinsed with a diluted solution of rice vinegar and peroxide that he kept in a small ceramic cup near the well. He did not call it dental hygiene at all. No, he did not. He called it keeping his mouth clean the way you keep any working tool clean. Now here is hack 12, the wound surface clean. For small cuts and surface abrasions, a single application of 3% hydrogen peroxide cleans the wound and produces the fizzing that shows oxidation is working on bacteria and dead tissue at the wound surface. Apply once, let it fizz, then rinse with clean water and cover with a clean cloth. Do not use it repeatedly on the same wound. Current wound care research is clear that repeated application slows the healing of new tissue. Stay safe. Once to clean, then leave it, and the body does the rest. The body does the rest. Hack 13, the nail fungus treatment. Soak the affected nail in undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide for 10 minutes daily. This will not clear a severe nail fungus infection on its own, and I want to say that plainly. For mild early-stage discoloration and surface fungus, daily soaking over several weeks produces visible improvement. For anything deeper or more advanced, a doctor is the right call. This is maintenance and early intervention, not treatment of a clinical infection. Hack 14: the underarm fabric rescue. The yellow staining on the underarm area of white shirts is not sweat alone. It is the reaction between sweat proteins and the aluminum compounds in many deodorants. Apply undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide directly to the stained area. Let it sit for 30 minutes before washing as normal. Patience is key here. For older set-in stains, make a paste with 1 part 3% peroxide and 2 parts baking soda, apply to the stain, and leave for 1 hour before washing. This works on cotton and most natural fibers. Test a hidden seam on synthetic fabrics first. Some synthetics discolor under prolonged peroxide contact. Hack 15: the garden tool disinfection. When you prune a diseased plant, the blade of your cutting tool carries the disease to the next plant you cut. Wiping your pruning shears or grafting knife with undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide between cuts or between plants breaks this chain. In our village garden, my father kept a small cloth soaked in a diluted peroxide solution hanging from his belt during the late summer pruning of the persimmon trees. The trees that came through the hard winters cleanest were always the ones he had pruned most carefully. He said the blade mattered just as much as the cut itself. This was his rule. Hack 16: the seed germination boost. Soak seeds in a solution of 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 32 parts water, roughly 3 milliliters of peroxide per 100 milliliters of water, for 30 minutes before planting. This softens the seed coat slightly and kills surface mold and bacteria that can rot a seed before it germinates. Rice farmers in our valley soaked seed rice in diluted solutions before planting for generations. The science explains it as surface sterilization and mild oxidative scarification. My grandfather called it waking the seed up properly before asking it to work. Hack 17: the plant mold and mildew spray. Mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 9 parts water in a spray bottle. Mist the affected leaves of indoor or outdoor plants showing white powdery mildew or gray mold. Apply in the evening, not in direct sunlight. On wet leaves under strong sun, the oxidation can be intense enough to spot burn the leaf surface. Treat every 3 days for 2 weeks. This is not a systemic fungicide. It treats the surface of the mold, not the condition of the soil or the root zone that may be causing the mold to thrive. Fix the airflow and the watering habit alongside the spray treatment, or the mold will return. Hack 18: the wooden tool handle treatment. Old wooden handles on rakes, hoes, hammers, any tool left in a barn or shed through a damp winter develop a gray surface mold and a roughness that will splinter your hands by spring. Wipe the handle down with undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide. Let it dry completely in the air. Then apply a thin coat of camellia oil, tsubaki oil, or linseed oil with a cloth, working it into the grain. The peroxide kills the surface mold and opens the grain slightly, preparing the wood. The oil then penetrates and conditions the wood in a way it cannot do over a moldy surface. My father did this every spring to every long-handled tool in the workshop without exception. None of his handles cracked. Several of them are still in use today. Hack 19: the mattress surface treatment. Strip the mattress cover and spray the bare mattress surface lightly with 3% hydrogen peroxide. Allow it to dry completely, and completely means completely, which in humid weather can take several hours with a window open and a fan running. This kills dust mites and the mold spores that accumulate in mattress foam over time. The treatment is the drying. A mattress that you treat and then cover while still damp creates exactly the warm, wet environment you were trying to remove. Patience is the method here, not the spray bottle. Hack 20: the ceramic and earthenware jar reset. Old ceramic storage jars, the kind used for pickles, miso, preserved vegetables, fermented foods, develop a residue on the interior walls between uses that can contaminate the next batch. Fill the jar with a solution of 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 10 parts water. Let it stand for 30 minutes, then empty and rinse thoroughly with cold water. Let the jar air dry upside down for at least 24 hours before using for fermented food. My grandmother did this every autumn before the tsukemono pickles went in. She said the jar had to be clean the way a mind has to be clear, empty of the last thing before it can hold the next one properly. 20 methods that were once standard in every Japanese household. Everything you see here comes from one single bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide. All cost under $3 and most under $1 per use in real terms. Each grounded in the same principle. Oxidation applied with patience and the right dilution is one of the most effective cleaning and preserving forces in an ordinary household. The last 5 are the ones I have saved deliberately. The uses that take the most explaining, the ones that make people the most skeptical when I describe them, and the ones that, once you understand what is actually happening, will make you the most quietly angry about what got taken away from ordinary homes in the name of selling something more expensive. The last 5 are not the most dramatic. They are the most telling. Each one points at the same quiet truth that a $2 bottle was already doing in ordinary homes what the cleaning and health industry spent decades convincing you required a specialist, a subscription, or a branded product at 10 times the price. Pay attention to that pattern as we go through them. Hack 21, the refrigerator water dispenser and ice maker line. The internal water lines and ice maker components of modern refrigerators are almost never cleaned because the cleaning process is not described in the manual and most people do not think of water as a surface that carries contamination. Run a solution of 30 milliliters of 3% hydrogen peroxide per 1 liter of water through the dispenser line once every 3 months. Consult your refrigerator's manual first to confirm this is compatible with your model's filtration system. Flush with 2 full liters of plain cold water afterward. The mold and bacterial colonies that form inside refrigerator water lines are invisible and tasteless in small quantities, which is precisely why nobody notices them until the problem has been building for 2 years. Invisible damage is still damage. My grandfather said the same thing about woodworm in a beam. You do not see it working, but the beam remembers. Hack 22, the humidifier tank clean. Humidifiers push water vapor into the air of a room. If the tank is not cleaned regularly, they also push mold spores and bacteria into that same air. Empty the tank completely into a sink. Fill with undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide. Let it sit for 30 minutes, swirling occasionally so every interior surface makes contact. Empty, rinse 3 times with clean cold water and refill with fresh water. Do this once a week during regular use. The cost of this treatment per week is less than 5 yen, just a few cents. The cost of doing nothing is breathing aerosolized mold into a room where someone sleeps. That is not a small thing in a wooden home in a humid climate, and it was not a small thing in the mountain villages either. Hack 23, the shower curtain mold reset. Remove the shower curtain from its rings. Lay it flat in a bathtub filled with cold water. Add 250 milliliters, 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide. Let the curtain soak for 1 hour. Drain the tub, rinse the curtain with cold water, hang it back and let it dry fully in moving air before closing it flat against the wall. The pink and black mold that grows on the lower third of a shower curtain is one of the fastest growing mold colonies in an average home because the conditions, warm, wet, low airflow, are ideal. This treatment costs under 50 yen per session, takes 4 minutes of active work, and eliminates what a replacement curtain at 800 yen or more only delays by a few months. Treat the curtain properly instead of buying a new one every season. Do not keep replacing it, just use this simple method instead. Hack 24, the car interior fabric treatment. car seats and interior fabric panels accumulate sweat, food particles, and spilled liquids that create odor and mold growth in warm weather, particularly in vehicles that sit closed in summer heat. Mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 2 parts cold water in a spray bottle. Mist the fabric surface lightly, not saturated lightly, and leave the car doors open in moving air until the interior is completely dry. The oxidation kills the mold and bacteria, causing the smell at the surface level. Do not use this on leather or suede. Do not use it on dark-colored upholstery without testing a hidden section first. Repeated application on dark fabric can cause mild lightening over time. One application on a problem area, followed by thorough drying, is what this is for. Hack 25. The old book and paper mold treatment. Old books, paper documents, photographs stored in boxes, anything paper kept in a basement, a closet, or a humid storage room develops a mold that smells of earth and age and slowly digests the paper itself. Dampen a cotton cloth or soft brush lightly with 3% hydrogen peroxide, not wet, barely damp, and brush the affected pages or cover surface gently. Let the item dry open in moving air away from direct sunlight. The peroxide kills surface mold without saturating the paper the way water would. For irreplaceable documents or photographs, test on a damaged edge first. For everyday books, this method has saved items that would otherwise have been lost. In the Kura storehouses of our village, those thick-walled buildings built to survive fire and flood, the old ledgers and land records were treated this way between the humid season and the dry season every year. Paper was not cheap, and nothing that could be saved was thrown away. Now let us reflect on why these methods were never shared with you. 25 methods that you can use at home, all from one bottle that cost less than $3. And the question I want you to sit with is this: why did nobody tell you? It is not a conspiracy, just simple economics. The answer is simpler than that, and almost worse. There is no money in a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. The bottle costs $2 and lasts months. You cannot build a brand around it, which is the problem. You cannot put a new label on it every season and charge $14 and call it an advanced formula. You cannot create a subscription service for it. The cleaning industry, the home care industry, the personal care industry, they are not evil. They are businesses after all and must survive. And businesses do not advertise the $2 thing that makes their $12 thing unnecessary. The old ways do not disappear because they stop working. They disappear because nobody profits from them continuing in the modern marketplace. The people in the Satoyama villages of Japan knew these things out of necessity, not because they were clever, but because they understood the land, because they had no choice, and necessity sharpens knowledge the way a whetstone sharpens a blade. My grandmother kept her ceramic jars clean using this method. My father kept his tools rust-free and his workshop dry. My grandfather kept his teeth. None of them needed a branded product to do any of these things. They needed patience, the right dilution, and the understanding that the invisible things, mold, bacteria, rot, are fought not with the most expensive weapon, but with the most consistent one. If you have stayed with me through all 25 of these, here is what I want you to do before the end of this week. Write it down if you need to. Buy 1 brown bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide if you do not have a fresh one in your cabinet. Start with 3 things: the cutting board, the refrigerator shelf, and whichever one of the 25 addresses the problem that is already bothering you in your home. Not all 25 at once. 3. Do them properly. Do them properly, with the right dilution and the right contact time, and pay attention to the result. That is how the old craftsman learned anything, one careful repetition at a time. Before you go, I want to ask you something important. Of the 25 methods in this series, which one surprised you most? Which one are you going to try first? Leave me that answer in the comments below. I read every comment, and the answers you leave shape what I share next on this channel. If this kind of practical, honest, low-cost method is useful to you, the subscribe button is right there. No pressure at all, but your support truly helps the channel continue sharing these methods. But if you want to keep receiving these old village methods, the ones that work, described plainly without selling you anything, that button is how you make sure the next one reaches you. The natural next step from hydrogen peroxide is rice vinegar, which we will explore in the next part of this series. Take care of what you own, and it will take care of you. That is what my grandfather taught me, and it has never once failed me.